Good afternoon, world. Okay, not quite afternoon, but it's an hour later than we normally leave. We had a cold front sweeping through the country this week, and I thought I'd be kind on both Brittany and myself and go out a little later this morning. Turns out we haven't yet beaten the cold because, as you can see, it is bitterly cold out there. I got excited because I thought we were going to have some debutantes on our sofa safaris, but they weren't as keen on the idea. So those little white butts running away were a pair of steenbok. But welcome back to another episode. It is chilly. I'm sure it's going to be a slightly quiet start to the morning, but as it warms up, so too will the animals. Lions. Miraculously, they haven't appeared on our sofa safaris for 2 episodes. It's not because they haven't been there, just we haven't really been focusing on them. But this morning, I'm missing them. I haven't seen them for a week now. I've been looking at other things like wild dogs and leopards. But this morning, that is our mission. So come along for the ride and let's see what else the bush has to offer. So let's enjoy. It's an indication of just how cold it is this morning that even the grey duikers are refusing to run away. That's 2 debutantes in the first minute of our sofa safari. Again, it's not that we haven't been seeing these antelopes, it's just that their typical behavior is once they're noticed, they dash off. They're some of our diminutive antelopes. The steenbok that we've just seen first is about 10 kilograms. The duiker is a little heavier, maybe 16, 17 kilograms, somewhere around there. But they're small, and their best defense is to go unnoticed. And when they are noticed, if they're standing still and hiding away doesn't work, then they run away. But this one, still standing there.
No, he's just got one.
It's about time. But yeah, a grey duiker. I think as winter comes and the bush opens up, we will get to see more of them and chat more about them. It's still chilly, only half an hour later. We've got tracks for some of the river pride and the Nara males coming up towards our northern part of our property, and we've encountered a early morning roadblock, a little breeding herd of elephants. You'll maybe see a little baby on the left hand side of the road trying to get to grips with the trunk. It's sometimes easier just to put the food in your mouth and bite it off that way than to do what Mom does and snap the branch so effortlessly with her own trunk. But you may have gathered from our recent photography, solo safaris and even sofa safaris that the elephants are starting to return. We've been talking about it for most of our lockdown session about the elephants. They will come back, but it does now evidently appear as though that time of the year of not plentiful yet, but regular elephant sightings is upon us. Pretending we have an electric car. Something I'm always interested to see is how animals' behaviors are going to change once electric cars do arrive. He would not be the best example to use. This is just a young bull who would like to be a yoga instructor. Yeah. Youngsters like this, young teenagers, are full of nonsense. So they are always going to be the most remonstrating of the bunch. Isn't there a pose in yoga called the elephant? Head held high, ears out, kicking the dust. Everything trying to make himself look bigger and more impressive, more intimidating. And not really a sign of disrespect that we're not moving away or not doing anything. It's just that a young male like that, if you were to suddenly drive away, he would think that he's getting the upper hand and he'd gain confidence and be more inclined to keep on coming. But stand your ground, turn off, sit quietly, and he will realize that he's not winning. More down.
Oh, Chad.
I've actually spoken numerous times about elephants stripping this so-called cambium layer off the bark of trees, off the trunks of trees. What happens now in winter is that these males and females, all elephants in general, will snap off branches, particularly of things like raisin bushes. In this case, you've got a sort of castor leaf cord. Never mind, raisin bush. And they will put the branch in the mouth, and then you'll just see them grinding it and slowly pushing the branch from one side to the other. As it comes out on the other side, you'll see how the outer bark has been stripped. The elephant will then remove it from the mouth, peel the rest of that outer bark off, discard the branch, and just eat that outer layer of wood. Doesn't sound very appealing, probably isn't, but at this time of year when these leaves are not containing so much moisture, the grass is all dry, this is one of the adaptations that elephants have had to evolve to deal with sustaining such a big mass during the winter months. One thing you'll notice about this female who's managed to find some greenery to shove in her bottom tip of the stomach is that she hasn't got tusks. Now, it does look a bit odd, and in African elephants we're so used to having males and females both bearing tusks that when you see a tuskless elephant it stands out. In the Asian elephants, typically only the males have tusks, females don't. Occasionally they do grow them, but in Africa it's very vital for feeding. So the fact that she hasn't got any tusks will make her life a little bit more difficult, especially coming up to this time of year when they are having to strip branches of their bark, break roots and all of that. It will make life more difficult, but this is an excellent example of the natural selection at work. The fact she hasn't got tusks is not natural selection, but it's the idea behind evolution and how all these animals evolved. They evolved. Having tusks as an elephant is typically a very beneficial trait to have. It allows you to feed, allows you to fight if you're a male. But during the 1970s and 90s and 80s, when poaching was so rife, if you had tusks, you got shot. If you didn't have tusks, suddenly you were in a better position to survive than those elephants that had tusks. And as a result of this, there was a selective advantage given to these tuskless elephants, and they started to proliferate through the population. You had tusks, you died. You didn't have tusks, you survived. And in certain reserves in Zambia, I've read about the proportion of elephants that were tuskless went from being about 3% before the poaching to more than 33% after it. So a tenfold increase in their prevalence. It's not to say that they bred better than the others, but they just survived better than the others. Their genes survived, they mated with other tuskless elephants, and so these genes passed on, and that's why we still find elephants like this walking around today, even though poaching is not what it was then, and it is still very rife. I mean, we've spoke about it with the rhinos in our previous episode. It's still happening throughout Africa with the elephants, but they're in a much better position, and we're still finding these tuskless elephants surviving today. Theoretically, if you had rhinos that didn't have horns, that portion of the population would survive the poaching onslaught that is facing them now. But she's gone, so I should stop talking. It's taking me so long to get this video ready of Brit that the elephants are probably going to disappear. But people have been asking to learn more about Brit, so I thought, why not put her on the spot in the middle of her favorite animal, a herd of elephants. Hi, Brit.
Hi. Chad has really been testing my nerves this morning, but I thought I would step out from behind the camera to show you the camera, which a few of you have been asking about. So I shoot all of our Surfer Safari episodes with my Nikon Z6, or Nikon.
Or Z.
Or Z. There's a few ways you could say this. But yeah, it's my baby. It's a mirrorless camera. It shoots in 1080 up to 120 frames per second, which is how I get that buttery smooth slow motion that you guys have been enjoying. Then
Look
it
at this.
also shoots in 4K at up to 30 frames per second, which when I downsample to 1080, which is what I export the videos in, I can zoom right in on the animals, which is really quite fun. And then the lens that I'm using is the 100 to 400. It's a really light lens for such a far zoom, which is really great for me because I'm not as strong as Luke or Chad with their massive lenses.
And our massive muscles.
And then on the top here, this fluffy thing is actually our microphone. So we recently just got the dead cat. So yes, this is called a dead cat.
As in recently, like yesterday. So it's a debut for the dead cat as well.
So hopefully we will be getting less wind noise in our episodes going forward. And then stabilizing it, I've got this clamp thing, which was actually very generously given to us by one of our previous guests. So thank you very much for that. And that's it. And then for filming Chad and Luke's handsome faces, I just use my Galaxy Note 10 Plus, which Chad is busy holding now.
And a lot of filters. Just one question. Is a support thing the technical term for that?
Oh, is that what I called it?
Yes.
Support thing.
All right, there we go. That's Brit. Now let's go try find a non-dead cat. Yeah, a lot of little youngsters at this part of the herd. You can see this guy trying to raise his trunk at us. And then just behind is another female with a calf standing in the road. That youngster's busy nursing at the moment. Mom has obligingly decided to pause for a little bit for milk for the youngster. You may hear when she moves away a bit of a scream or a temper tantrum coming from the youngster if it doesn't get the milk it wants. Although, to be honest, that typically starts happening more in the terrible twos. Literally, just like humans. That little one has literally been on by his mom. These little ones spend so much of their time sticking right by mom, and when they're that young, often you'll see them weaving between her legs. Now the problem is if they're standing behind mom just to be close to mom, she doesn't care. I mean, nature calls, and she will just do her business. And if the youngster is standing underneath her, like was clearly the case with that one, they are going to get a bit of fecal matter on the forehead. And there's an elephant who's decided to come munch the bush right next to us here. Terrible elephant.
You need tusks.
I'm a tuskless elephant. This is a struggle that the tuskless elephant has. She can't break stuff. It's not impossible. Never mind. Looks like he's been intoxicated by mom's droppings on his head. Although there's a whole lot of moisture everywhere on that young one's body. So I don't know if he got sprayed at the water hole. Ooh, that's how it happens. He's standing in the danger zone there. He's going back for more. What? One step forward. Now, before we freak out at the fact that this little one is doing exactly what you saw, eating his mom's doo-doo, it is just vegetation. There is 60% of what she's put out there is coming out undigested and unused. So the little one is not actually eating it to get to that 60% of energy that is still available in there. but rather when they're born they haven't got the microorganisms and the microfauna in their gut that is going to help break down their food at a later stage in life. So what they do is they go and they nibble on mom's droppings, and this will kind of impregnate their stomach with the fauna and flora that they need later on in life to break down the food for them. That's been a magical, almost been with them for an hour. My first layer has come off, my gloves have come off, and yeah, not only warmed the heart, but warmed the body too. A lot of lion tracks here where they've just come through, so we're going to just have a little look around, continue our search for them. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and I'm sure, or I know we have many elephant lovers out there. This is probably going to become quite a common scene and theme for our solo safaris over the coming months, so I do trust that you enjoyed this. If memory serves correct, it was Pierre that asked us to film some blue waxbills, and here is our attempt at filming some blue waxbills. Lovely little scene at one of the last remaining pools of water here along the shoreline. A bit of a stretch to call it a pool, but with a nice thicket on the side and water available in the open, it's drawing a lot of birds. We've got some crested barbets that are down there, little blue waxbills coming and going, and also Jamison's 5-finches have been popping down from time to time. There's the female 5-finch left behind them. Male 5-finches are beautiful and quite vividly reddish pink. Females far less so. They've got less need to look attractive, and it's males that have to look good to attract them. Spotted Brittany, given up on spotting birds this morning. Got a green-winged petilia that's arrived at the back, formerly known as a Melba finch. Looks like the female. That was a hammerkop. I was too busy asking Britt about the last time we saw them, which was no, not the last time. The last time we filmed them was months ago. But I remember Britt, Luke, and I sitting taking photos of hammerkops. It was before the days of sofa safaris. But yeah, a little hammerkop stalk, looking for tadpoles and frogs that are left behind in another tiny pool here in the shoreline. But alas, he has flown off, so we will drive off and continue our endless search for lions. The camerawoman's putting so much pressure on me today. It's ridiculous. She's not, it's fine. We're trying this again now with another steenbok this morning. She's fortunately decided to stand in a relatively open patch, which allows us to see her. If you were to move a few meters to her left into that long grass, they completely disappear. I guess it's a little bit difficult for you to get perspective over just how small these little antelopes are, and most visitors see one of them and get a bit distressed because they think that it's a baby antelope who's been left by its mom. That is far from baby. That is a fully grown adult female. Enormous ears relative to their body size, just to help. Ooh, with hearing, she can probably just hear my stomach rumbles. When you're alone and haven't got anybody else to spot the danger for you, you need to make sure that you're going to be the one that picks it up first. Those ears help, so even when the head is down feeding, they can listen around to what's going on around them, and they tend to do exactly what she's doing now, move quite a bit. While they're feeding, if you're standing in one spot feeding, you become a much easier target for a predator to stalk. But if you're a constantly moving target, it's much more difficult. They tend to rely more on their movement when they're feeding than standing still like a herd of impala would. A little caterpillar that this hornbill had found in a bush flew up to that branch, and then you saw it rubbing it against the branch, most likely just to try and dislodge some of those protective hairs that may have been on it. But it's flown away now, so I can't see if it ate it. But they would literally just swallow that thing whole. Birds and their ability to swallow things are pretty impressive. Getting late in the morning, 10:15 now, but a bit of cloud cover that's come out and still kept it cool, which is why even at this time of day, this little black-backed jackal hasn't retired to the shade. He's lying out in the open on one of these sodic sites. A lot of impalas as company, and a few zebras coming to join it up ahead. Very much like a domestic dog, close relatives. They're part of the same genus. Dogs come from that, wolves come from, but different genus to our wild dogs. It's actually more close related to a domestic dog than a wild dog. I may have mentioned before, but these jackals, they are omnivorous, meaning that they eat both meat and plant matter. But despite it being a predator, the impalas know that they're just too big for it on its own. When the impala lambs are around, it's a different story. They do take quite a toll on the baby impalas. But now as adults, they live quite happily together. Impala and jackal. It's tree time again. We actually had what looked like some reasonably fresh tracks for Ntombi, our female leopard from this area, coming towards this section of the Sholumi. And while we're here, just admiring the large trees that surround us on the banks of the Sholumi. And there's two trees that have always confused me that grow in the same environments. And most guides and people that know trees will be thinking, how on earth do you get confused between a jackalberry on my left and a weeping bourbein on my right? And if you know what you're looking for, then it's quite easy. But if you don't, they both just look like big impressive trees growing on the banks of rivers. Now, to begin with, the bark of the jackalberry, Diospyros mespiliformes, tends to be darker and more blocky than the bark of our weeping bourbein, which is Scotia brachypetala, and that can be the first clue. The growth form, jackalberries tend to be a little bit more upright with very dense canopies, whereas the weeping bourbein branches do tend to droop down towards the end. But if you're not seeing that very clearly and you're wanting to get a more accurate identification of them or differentiation between them, you have to come, as always, and look at not just the general shape of the tree, but the leaves. We spoke a little bit about the leaves and the differences between our marulas in the past, but if we look at this tree and this branch in my hand over here, this compound leaf, this pinnately compounded leaf, belongs to the weeping bourbein behind me. So if you see these leaves without any petioles, or actually leaflets without any petioles, then you know that that is going to be a weeping bourbein. Whereas if you find the more simple wavy edged leaves, that is going to be of your jackalberry. Now remember, in terms of this tree, this is actually one leaf that has had its surface area reduced, whereas on this jackalberry, each one of these things is going to be a leaf. The wavy edges might be a little bit reminiscent of our magic guarri bushes that we have shown you, the toothbrush tree, but over here. If you're trying to differentiate between a young jackalberry and a magic guarri, although the leaves may look the same, another trick is to look where the leaves start. So on a jackalberry tree over here, we can say that the leaves are alternating. One grows that side, one grows that side, one grows that side, one grows that side. To differentiate that from our magic guarri, you'll see how we call the leaves as being opposites. So both leaves start together at the same point. There we go. So now that you can actually tell the difference between them, it's worth going for a close look and see what they actually do. Well, starting with the weeping bourbein, and this is definitely a tree that will be featured again come September time, beginning of spring, because it gets its common name, weeping bourbein, from the fact that it produces a proliferation of flowers during the early parts of spring, these beautiful red flowers with very short petals, and actually its Latin name brachypetala means short petal, and these flowers produce so much nectar, and without the big petals the nectar starts dripping down the weeping part. But what you'll probably be drawn to most before the flowers is just the incredible amount of activity from the birds. All of your nectar eating birds will be there. A lot of insects will be drawn to the nectar, which will draw in the insect eating birds themselves. So it is a hive of activity with starlings and sunbirds. Your go-away birds are there as well. So that is the weeping boer bean. The jackalberry, as its name suggests, has got berries. And we saw our black-backed jackal this morning, and some of the stories told are that the black-backed jackals, or jackals in general, as omnivores, do like to come and eat the fruits of the jackalberry tree. I've never seen a jackal eating a jackalberry berry before. Lots of birds. I have one that grows outside my house, and these fruits are constantly falling on my roof. There's always barbets, there's always go-away birds in my tree. They last for a very long time. The Latin name for this, Diospyros, actually means fruit of the gods, or the divine fruit, or actually divine pear rather, pear of the gods. Because of these fruits, they tend to stay most of the year round. Once they turn a little orange color, then they are actually very edible, but for most of the year they stay on the tree as green, inedible, at least for human terms, fruits. What we can do with the unripened fruit is squeeze some of that inside moisture out, and that becomes a sap that can be used as a glue if you need to. I actually tried that when I read about it, and I haven't gone to check how well stuck together my pages are, but they say it is a paper glue that can be used. But yeah, the berries themselves are the big draw of this tree for also a whole host of birds, as well as when they fall down, things like nyalas, monkeys, baboons, and obviously jackals. Now that I've fixed my wardrobe malfunction, I can carry on. You'll have to go back and see what was wrong. Just a little bit medicinally. If you're suffering from a cough, you can take some of the bark of this tree, put it on a fire, and inhale that smoke that is generated from burning the bark to deal with your cough. And likewise this is a jackalberry, with our weeping boer bean, if you have a blood nose, you can take some of the leaves that are pulled off, put those on a fire and inhale those, and those are going to stop your blood nose. Weeping boer bean is also pretty good. I should make a note of this. If you have got a hangover or heartburn, you can just make a decoction from the bark and drink that, and it will sort you right out. Although I think that's the last thing I'd want to be doing with a hangover, is going and hacking bark off a tree and boiling it in water. But anyway, it can be done. And before we lose all the light, we're going to go keep on looking along the banks of the Sholumi to see if we can find dear old Ntombi or some lions that I promised you earlier, because I don't want the only cat on this show to be the dead cat that was covering Brittany's microphone earlier. So not quite the spots that we were on the search for, but always welcome spots to see whilst on a safari. A little journey of giraffes, female giraffes this time. Quite often the giraffes we have been showcasing on our safaris have been the males, the young males, but this is a more docile group. You can probably tell them females because of the fact that they're not whacking each other with their heads like we always see. But it probably bears repeating. As we're moving into the winter, we've seen the vegetation changing, but this area along the riverbank still looking very, very green, and it does contain evergreen trees, and this is what these giraffes are now starting to move towards. They are less nutritious, but because they are still available and still have moisture, the giraffes are going to make their way here. It's been a day of not having antelopes run away from us. Kudus, we've seen a few females and the odd male, but normally every time we try to film them they just dash off. That very impressive specimen was far more cooperative. Not as cooperative as we wanted. We had a perfect spot waiting for him to walk into the sunset, but he opted to go down to the river. But yeah, a beautiful male kudu, and coming into their breeding season, so not quite as hormonally driven as the impalas, but their behavior does change and they start spending a lot more time hanging around with the female group. So we'll hopefully be able to get some nice kudu bull action over the coming weeks. But sun is almost set. We're going to do one more loop, not having any joy with Ntombi. Go sit on Sunset Plains for a little bit to see if the lions roar. Otherwise we're going to call it a day, but we're not giving up just yet. Heading back home after a sadly unsuccessful search for our big cats, but we have found probably a much rarer, smaller nocturnal creature. at least rarer for our eyes, that is a genet. Sorry, from my position, I can't see if it is a large or a small spotted genet. More than likely a large spotted, they are the more commonly occurring ones here, but I wouldn't call it a cat. Genets are the most closely related to the mongooses. They're part of the Viverridae family, which is shares a common ancestor most recently with the mongooses, but they're nocturnal. They come out at night now. No doubt there's a crevice within this marula tree that this genet has spent the day in resting, coming out now and going to go hunting this evening, looking for birds, eggs, insects, occasionally some omnivorous tendencies with fruits and that, but mostly going to be smaller rodents, reptiles, and birds. Seems I'm making a habit of ending these drives in the dark, but thanks for joining us for another episode of Sofa Safari. 3 debutantes who were just saying, the Steenbuck, the Dake, and now our little Janet. So might not have had the big cats as we usually do, but I'm sure you, or trust that you enjoyed what we had to offer anyway. And be sure to check up again very soon for the next episode. But until then, as always, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.